we're like, hey. There's no.
With me today are Paige Wilson, who is a waste production and diversion planner for the department, and Ann Astorita, who is the pollution prevention coordinator, also within the waste management division at PBS. So we're going to get into a little bit of the background for the solid waste disposal ban on lithium-ion batteries, a little bit of the why the ban was put into effect, what it means for solid waste facilities, and some of the resources and tools that may be available to help you educate folks in the communities. So without further ado, we'll get right into it. So I think most of us in the room at this point have heard, as of July 1st of this year, lithium-ion batteries, rechargeable batteries that are made out of lithium-ion, are banned from disposal in landfills and incinerators. So this ban, it applies to landfills and incinerators, or at least these items can't be put in, landfills or incinerators. But in order for everyone to, or in order for this ban to be successful, everyone needs to play a part. It means that households and businesses and solid waste facilities need to be doing their best to try to capture these devices and prevent them from going into disposal. So lithium-ion batteries, they've become very popular in the consumer marketplace. The list of items that use lithium-ion batteries keeps growing and growing. And a lot of the old rechargeable battery chemistries are becoming less common, and they're being taken over by lithium-ion. It's because lithium-ion has really high power density compared to the size of the battery. So you can store a lot more power in a lithium-ion battery than a similar sized battery of a different chemistry. So they're really taking over. They're used in, everyone's got a cell phone probably in their pocket. That usually has a lithium-ion battery. So a lot of electronic devices like cell phones, laptops, tablets, cameras, wireless headphones. You're also seeing a lot of electric lawn care equipment coming onto the market now, like weed trimmers and chainsaws and yeah, just if you can think of it, they probably have figured out a way to power with the lithium-ion battery. Cordless power tools have been around for a while. Personal care products like toothbrushes or shavers. Lots of toys, lots of personal mobility devices like scooters or e-bikes or hoverboards. So the list just keeps growing. And this is not a comprehensive list. It's just some of the highlights. So why is there a disposal ban? Lithium-ion batteries, first of all, are made of metals that should be recovered. They're materials that are recyclable, and so we should be doing what we can to recover those items and make new lithium-ion batteries, especially with the way it seems like society is really moving towards a lot of electrification of tools and devices, and so much of our life now is powered by these cordless rechargeable devices. So if we're going to need to continue to use lithium-ion batteries, it's important that we recycle them. So that's number one. That's kind of the rationale behind the ban. But also, lithium-ion batteries can pose a safety risk. And this is, they're not properly managed. So say they're put in the trash or in mixed recyclables, and they're transported in a truck, and they can potentially get crushed. That damages the internal structure of those batteries, and it can lead to a chemical reaction inside the battery. It's called thermal runaway, where essentially the battery self-heats to a point where it ignites. And if it's, in a mixed load of waste, that whole load of waste potentially has ignitable material in it, like paper and, who knows, plastics of all sorts. So that whole load of waste can then ignite. So it becomes a real challenge for waste management facilities, waste management haulers. And lithium-ion batteries are hotter, they burn longer, and they're very difficult to put out because sometimes these batteries can actually reignite even though you think you've extinguished the fire. So they are challenging to deal with. So that's one of the rationales behind the ban. And what happened was in 2024, Representative Karen Evil from New London introduced HB 1386, which was the proposal for this lithium-ion battery ban. And She did that primarily driven by the safety risks and the hazards. One of the things that we've been hearing about is an uptick in fires throughout the state. A lot of solid waste management facilities or haulers are experiencing fires. There was a recent study by the National Waste and Recycling Association that 5,000 or more fires occur every year in the United States. And the leading cause for those fires is suspected to be lithium-ion batteries. So it's not a problem that's getting smaller, it's a problem that's getting bigger. And the other thing is that when these fires occur, it can be very expensive for the facilities to repair and get back. There's been fires in New Hampshire in the news recently from the city of Keene, had 2 fires back to back. Lebanon has had fires. The transfer station in Lee has had a fire that they know is from a lithium-ion battery. They actually have video. They have a video of it on the New Hampshire Recycles website. And then in Nashua, I think it was back in May, there was a fire in an apartment building from an e-bike that was being improperly charged. So again, it's happening all over the place. So not only is it important to keep batteries out of the trash because of fire potential or out of the recycling stream, it's also important to keep batteries out of scrap metal loads. And this is something that a lot of scrap metal facilities have been focusing on and trying to increase awareness. So scrap metal recyclers in a lot of cases are now charging fees for things that shouldn't be in scrap metal loads that could pose a hazard, including lithium-ion batteries, but also lead acid batteries, propane tanks that are under pressure, and sometimes they're seeing hybrid hot water heaters, which use a heat pump, and so they look very similar to your standard electric water heater, but they actually use a refrigerant as well. So there's refrigerant contained in them. So they're actually a refrigerant, they're like a refrigerator or air conditioner. They manage that way. So yeah, so there's all sorts of things that could end up in scrap metal, but things that have lithium-ion batteries might be like lawn care equipment or e-bikes. They may have metal components, but they also probably have batteries, so that should be avoided at all costs. And speaking of costs, one scrap metal vendor has been imposing fees recently for the first offense. If the facility sends them a load and they notice something that's non-conforming or is a safety hazard, they'll charge $275 per item that they find in scrap metal. Second offense is $550 per item, and then the third offense, you're going to get fined again, but you also have the potential of not being able to work with that scrap metal recycler. So I want to be clear that this is just a scrap metal facility that's imposing these fees. It's not that DES is imposing the fees or landfills are imposing fees. It's really a business practice of this scrap metal recycler so that they can encourage people to not put that stuff in their place. So batteries intersect with scrap metal. We just talked about that. They also intersect with electronics. And when the ban on lithium-ion batteries was enacted, it also updated the definition of electronic devices for New Hampshire. There were certain electronic devices that were banned from disposal from, I want to say, like the early 2000s. When they enacted the lithium-ion battery ban, they also updated the ban on disposable electronic devices and actually expanded the types of electronics that are banned from disposal. So now the types of electronics that are banned from disposal in New Hampshire are computers, monitors, and laptops, computer peripherals, which are things that are used with a computer, like mice, keyboards, computer speakers, external hard drives. It also includes printers, copiers, and fax machines, wireless phones, devices containing a cathode ray tube. So think of like your old style television, or old computer monitors that have like the glass screen. It also includes TVs and video display devices. So anything with a screen that's greater than 4 inches diagonal, essentially, is considered a video display device. It also includes video display media players / recorders, which is a fancy term that no one uses to describe VCRs, DVD players, things like that. So it's important to note, I'll just go back to that slide real quick. Of these items, many of them are banned because they're electronic devices, but many of them also contain lithium-ion batteries or rechargeable batteries. So they would be banned on both counts essentially because they're electronic devices included in the list here, but also because of that battery. So that's just something to keep in mind. If it doesn't have a cord, probably means it has some sort of battery. It's probably a lithium-ion battery. So I do also want to know what is not included as an electronic device that's banned from disposal. But the definition that was added to the law says basically electronic device does not include any motor vehicle part. Any motor vehicle or part of a motor vehicle. Security or border control equipment like body scanners, commercial medical equipment, and devices contained within a smart appliance or exercise equipment. So like, like a washing machine that has Wi-Fi connectivity, that would not be covered under the ban as an electronic device. It is important to note that, those things still can be recycled, and you can often send them to a scrap metal recycler, but it's not necessarily going to be banned from disposal like other electronic devices. And a lot of exercise equipment these days has like a screen built into it, like a Peloton or something like that, like the stationary bikes. Just because it has a screen integrated into the bike doesn't mean that it's an electronic device that's banned. But again, I just want to reiterate, may not be banned from disposal, but that doesn't mean that you can't recycle it and get revenue from it. Oh, and next is Paige. That went fast.
Yeah.
So we'll turn it over to Paige and then after that.
Any questions so far? But I think I'm understanding. Right. Okay, so yeah, so Mike, just described all these different battery powered devices that are banned from disposal. So what are we supposed to do with them? We're supposed to try to recycle them. So I'm just going to cover some recycling options for different audiences, mainly starting with residents first, and then talk about businesses and then municipalities. So residents, obviously can ask you guys, town transfer stations or their curbside provider if they, go through a private company, or household hazardous waste vendors will sometimes take lithium-ion batteries. I don't know if True Debbie has indicated that they do.
I believe they do, but it might not be part of our current contract.
Gotcha, okay. So it might be something to consider for future contracts, to specifically call that out as something for an option. I don't know what the associated cost would be with that, but just something to negotiate. Any transfer stations in here that are not currently accepting batteries could also point their residents to different retailers in the area. Batteries Plus, Best Buy, like big box stores for electronics. Home Depot does, Lowe's does as well, but they don't really advertise it. I haven't been in a Lowe's store anytime recently, so I haven't been able to check it out, but I have gone to Best Buy and Staples and seen that they do have pretty clear like recycling signs and areas that people can bring stuff. Bike shops as well participate in the call to recycle e-bike battery take back program. Those e-bikes, it kind of depends on the brand. The brand has to, sign up and work with call to recycle specifically. So it might not be all e-bike battery brands, but the call to recycle website does have all of the participating brands listed there alphabetically. So we recommend that people check, the call to recycle website or Earth 911. You can pull up a map and kind of type in your zip code and it'll give you the closest recycling option nearest to you. And then people can also just Google search like mailback programs. There's a company called Redwood Materials that offers, mailback programs. I think they're actually based out of like Arizona. So they may not be like local mail back programs, but it can be an option. The cost obviously is dependent on the company, but could just be a way to get to people who might not, have means of having a car. Or might be in more remote locations, where these big box stores aren't really nearby. For businesses, some similar options, mail back programs and just checking the call to recycle website, but obviously. Businesses might have some more considerations, like they can't just maybe bring it to the transfer station because maybe the facility doesn't take it. But they can also manage the batteries as a universal waste and hire a vendor themselves. Again, they could come to you guys and ask, but you're not obligated to take it. And it might not even be allowed in your facility permit, so, just something to look into. Do any towns in here actually collect from any like commercial businesses or anything like that? No, have any of them come to you saying like, oh, we have batteries or stuff to get rid of?
Light bulbs.
Light bulbs, oh, okay, yeah, that kind of makes sense, yeah. They could also work with, a household hazardous waste, like the event that Tridebi, comes and hosts in the Lakes region. Not all HHW events though in the state will allow businesses to like pre-register. But is that something that's in your contract?
We are currently working on small quantity generators this year.
Oh, nice, awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, so I know
It's a
that like
pilot.
Upper Valley Lakes Region Planning Commission, they allow businesses to pre-register and like non-residents from like people outside of kind of the regular region of where the HHW event actually serves. So yeah, so there are some options, just things to be aware of. So for municipalities, there call to recycle collection boxes. How many people in the room currently use these boxes? Are you paying the fee or are you still working off the boxes that you had before the fee? There's no fee? Oh, paying the fee, oh, sorry. Are you also paying the fee at your facility? Oh, Laconia.
We haven't.
Oh, you guys are back on Laconia, okay, I see. And are you in Meredith? Okay. Anybody else call to recycle boxes?
Mike, how much is that fee?
It's boxes out of the box, it's like $160.
Yeah.
Okay.
So when the disposal ban, when Representative Evil put the law, forward, at the time, the call to recycle boxes were still free. And so part of her thinking was, we have this free recycling option that municipalities can, order these boxes and get rid of them at no cost. But, they kind of go hand in hand with the disposal ban, but as that law was moving through the legislature, call to recycle, up their prices and, it has caused a problem now where there is now an expense for municipalities. So it's something that we recognize is a change that was kind of unanticipated. There's potential for her to introduce another law. There are conversations happening about doing an EPR program. So EPR is extended producer responsibility. Basically it extends the responsibility and the costs for recycling those batteries back on the manufacturer. So it would help cover the cost of those boxes again. And, hopefully make it free for municipalities, but that law is still kind of an idea at this point, but with this change in the cost and the disposal ban in place, there's a momentum to kind of do an EPR program in the state. A lot of our neighboring states have done EPR and it's been really successful and it helps keep the costs down. So just something I guess to kind of keep an eye out for, and I'm sure we'll be happy to do a training about it if if it goes through, and just helping you guys understand the law itself, but yeah, so just kind of a side note for that. Another option is, working with the HHW vendor, but also with different vendors through New Hampshire Recycles, like RM Recovery, and I'm sure that there's a lot of other vendors that New Hampshire Recycles works with. There are also opportunities for towns to work with state contracted vendors. And use like state pricing that we get. Or just working with your own electronics vendors that you guys already might have a relationship with. So on the New Hampshire Department of Administrative Services website, which we can give you these slides after, so you have all the links. But you can just type in recycle or electronic, and the different contracts that are active will pop up. And so, you know, we work with North Coast Services, Colt Recycling, Northeast Electronics and Recycling, and you can use these to help get rid of your electronics and also probably your batteries as well, because they kind of go hand in hand. And if you want to learn kind of how to navigate those and what grants are also available, Tara hosted a SWAT class that's available online, and it kind of goes through the process of how to use these contracts and different contact information and forms and that kind of thing. So that's a resource available to you guys. Are any of you guys been working with your electronics vendors to get rid of your batteries? For those that aren't using Colt Recycle boxes?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you know who your
Not
vendors?
those.
North Coast? Nice. Do you happen to know like the pricing? I'm just kind of curious.
Not off the top of my head. But they take our the batteries, we do take lithium ion tool batteries.
Yep.
I've been telling residents to bring their little AA lithium ion back to Home Depot or Lowe's, so.
Yeah, so the like, alkaline, like these little AA batteries, stuff like this, take them, yeah, so AA, batteries, like these can actually just go in the trash, they can be recycled, like you can bring them to a Staples or a Best Buy, but if you just take the ends of them, they can actually go right in the trash.
The lithium ion?
No, alkaline batteries, like
Alkaline,
double I, AA, AAA,
Right.
like, but no, not the lithium ion,
No.
right? No, but these ones can definitely, just go right into the trash.
Can I ask a quick question about this list?
Yes.
Is the benefit of using a state approved vendor is that the municipality doesn't have to put out its own RFQ or RFP?
Yeah, yes,
I
right,
just wanted to get that clear.
yep, so a little bit saves time on that sense.
Mhm.
All right, so I have two questions.
Okay.
For the alkaline battery, is it a better procedure to tape the ends before they go in the trash?
As opposed to not?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, so if there happens to be any kind of charge left in the battery, it doesn't, you know, come in contact with something else down the line in the trash that, you know, causes some kind of spark, so it's just kind of like a best practice.
Okay.
Yeah.
What if, is it still okay if they go in the trash without the taped ends? I'm just wondering if like, cause I'm assuming that happens, so.
Yeah, no, it definitely does, cause. Yeah, I don't
We
think,
have a slide about taping and
Okay.
we can talk about
yeah,
that.
yeah.
The, the only other question I have on this slide was, you mentioned grants. I'm just wondering, like, one quick example of a potential grant. If you know of one, or what it's used for, or anything like
Let's
that.
see, that class was a while ago. I think the reason why she lumped in grants was to also talk about the new state grant program that we'll have coming up. If I'm remembering the timing correctly. So it wasn't necessarily grants to help recycle batteries and
Okay.
electronics. It was just the topic of the class was state contracts and also funding for like municipalities. So
Gotcha.
municipal options for recycling and municipal grants.
I think probably the used oil grant, the
Yes.
household hazardous waste.
Yeah.
Reimbursement grant,
Yeah.
There may have been others, but.
Yeah, so it's state grant programs, and I think we also mentioned some federal ones like through EPA and USDA. And I also have an ongoing list of grants that I'm happy to give out to anybody that, you know, wants it. You know, anytime someone reaches out with a project, I just kind of give out this general list and kind of leave it up to the person to figure out what grant program works for their project, because a lot of projects are so specific. And you know, each town is different, has different demographics and medium household income, so I do have a list though of funding opportunities if anybody wants that, I'm happy to email it to you. And I think I'm gonna hand it over to Anne at this point. Hi, I'm Ann Astorita, I'm the pollution prevention coordinator, and we're gonna talk about managing the batteries. Alrighty. So I thought in order to tackle this issue, we should probably talk about the types of batteries that we're seeing to start off with. So we're just gonna do a rapid review. It's not the most scintillating of topics, but we're gonna tackle it and see where we go. So there's, of course, the single-use batteries that you use once and you're done with them, and then the rechargeable batteries. So we'll start with single-use. They're the non-lithium types, like the alkaline that Kate mentioned, the button cells, and then there's the lithium metals, which are not rechargeable. Lithium metals, they're like, they're alkaline, look like lithium, double A, triple A, etc. But there's letter codes on them. So one of the things you might want to start thinking about is taking a look at the batteries that people give you if you decide to collect. You're gonna see certain information on them. Some will just say alkaline on them, some will say what they are, cadmium. Some will have a garbage can on it with a nice big X on it, and you're like, yes, I know, it doesn't go in the trash. It needs to be recycled, and some will actually say for recyclable on them. I've spent more time in the last week looking at batteries than I have like in my entire lifetime, let me just say, and it is still confusing. So I can imagine if you've got like a big line of cars, people are just handing you batteries or want to put something somewhere, it's gonna be a lot. So might have to do some homework on it, but I thought we'd start with this, and we're happy to give our presentation to Matt, so you guys can take a look at this on your own. Then there are the rechargeable batteries, which are more common. In that they're in more of the electronic devices that you'll see, and in that they are the ones that are gonna be affected by the disposal ban, which started on July 1st. So there's the nickel cadmium, the small scale lead acid, nickel metal, zinc, and lithium ion. So with lithium batteries, there's lithium ion, lithium polymer, and lithium metal. So we'll talk about those different types. So nickel cadmium, anyone familiar with those off the top of your head? Like what kind of batteries they would be in? You've seen them probably, you don't even realize, but they're largely phased out now to lithium ion, lithium metal hydride, and they're in legacy equipment. So for example, my husband cleaned out our shed out back, and his great uncle had some old like power equipment, and I'm sure there were nickel cadmium batteries in that. So when folks clean out their house, you might see some nickel cadmium. They were, which I thought was interesting. Sometimes they use them in aerospace because they're less sensitive to extreme temperatures. So, aside, the small scale lead acid batteries are what you'll see in like a little black box. So if you see like a black box battery, it's likely that that's a small scale lead acid, which I just learned by looking online as well. And so for those are in a lot of emergency lighting systems and exit signs. You'll see like a little black box attached. Also some medical systems, wheelchairs, infusion pumps, and also electric gates and fences will have an SSLA. For nickel metal hydride, they're also in legacy emergency backup lighting, cameras, older toothbrushes, older electric shavers, and then the nickel zinc, similar to the nickel metal hydride, but with higher voltage, and they had limited. So the page showed me this, and I almost had a heart attack, but you're probably going to see this. So it's gonna come to you and they're gonna be like here, and then you're gonna have to figure out what you're gonna do with all of this. Hopefully, it will look more like this. So you'll be able to, properly put them in a place to recycle them. So since this ban is for lithium batteries, lithium ion batteries, I thought let's talk a little bit about the difference between lithium metal and lithium ion. So lithium metal batteries, which are in the Duracell picture that you can see, are very reactive. If you recall, they are the single-use battery, so you can't recharge them. And the tricky thing is, like, some batteries are rechargeable, and you want to make sure folks are not recharging something that they're not supposed to, because it can damage the battery. And when it comes to you've got a battery that's damaged, it's going to be even more sensitive to being, packed or compacted than the usual one. The lithium metal are managed as hazardous waste. It reacts instantly with water, so you can make sure that it's in an area that's covered. you wanna have your shed or wherever you're keeping them in a container, preferably with like, you know, sand or something underneath to absorb something that doesn't go right into the ground and have it covered and protected from precipitation of any kind that we have here in New Hampshire, whether it's like hail or sleet, freezing rain, regular rain, snow, etc. The lithium polymer is less reactive, but it's also sensitive to overcharge. So for example, if people overcharged it and it's damaged, they're gonna wanna get rid of it. So you're also gonna be getting batteries that maybe are not, in addition to being at the end of their life, no more charge, but damaged in a way. So this is the reason why we wanna manage them especially carefully. The lithium ion battery is less reactive than the lithium metal, but we don't want to damage them. They have to be recycled. And we're gonna talk a little bit more about why we don't want to damage them. But before I do that and dive in, if you need more battery information, you want to see pictures of different types of batteries and what to do with them. This website by EPA is good. It's called, if you just Google EPA used household batteries or used batteries, it'll come right up. And again, this should be available to you from that.
Amy, a question.
Oh, no, yeah,
There's
Mike.
a plan in the audience.
I'm sorry, it's a little blurry over there.
So just to clarify, Ann, is a lithium metal battery banned from disposal if a household resident throws it in the trash? Is that,
It should be
against the
treated
law?
as, it's not against the law, but it should be treated as, they should either return it to a Home Depot or a Lowe's or a Batteries Plus, or if the transfer facilities are taking them, it should be treated as, waste.
so residents should take it to the household hazardous waste event,
That would be ideal.
but
If
is
there's
it
coming
is it
to it-
banned from disposal?
Yes, I'm gonna say yes, it should be, yes. Is it by law? No. Is it, should
Okay.
it be?
Just gotta be clear on that.
Yes. Is it by law? No. Should it be? Yes. And I'm gonna talk to you a little bit about why we want the batteries out of the waste system. Any other questions before I move on? Yes.
So you mentioned more than lithium ion. Another one that I seem to encounter a lot more is the lithium iron phosphate, which is more like the lithium ion, which is not kind of like what you were saying there, because it's a lighter, multiple recharge battery, but it's not lithium ion.
But it's rechargeable, so. It's, yes, it's rechargeable. Just think of it this way, if it's rechargeable, it's recyclable. So you don't wanna throw it away in the waste stream, you wanna recycle
Well,
it.
I just think that the lithium is in more than just what you're saying. There's multiple
Yes,
lithium, and just saying lithium ion is a very vague.
right, so there's lithium ion, lithium metal, the one type,
Yeah,
there's
lithium
lithium polymer.
Oxide.
There's all sorts. Again, think about it this way, if it's rechargeable, it's recyclable. So put it in wherever you're gonna recycle.
The law says lithium ion batteries.
And that's all it says.
Right, I know,
So that's
know.
the vagueness
no,
of
I
it.
know, just to,
That is the law. The law says lithium ion. So you're gonna have to make subjective decisions in the field. And I wish I had a better answer for you, but that's the way it's gonna work out until we get something like extended producer responsibility where you just ship the batteries right back to the producer. And then they have to deal with it. And I think suddenly things will get a little bit easier and there'll be like less issues if we get people just have to return the battery.
Well, I'm just starting to see in larger form, whereas opposed to, like car lead acid batteries now, you know, I used a lithium iron phosphate as the example. They make large car sized battery lithium iron phosphate that can't go back to, you know, a lead, recycler. Now it's what you take up the vast majority of my recycle box.
Right, right.
So here's one thing to think about. Lithium ion is an umbrella term, and there are actually multiple different types of batteries that fall under that umbrella. So Ann already mentioned lithium polymer or LiPo. Some people get confused. They're like, is this a lithium ion battery? Yes, it is a type of lithium ion battery. If I trust Google, I just search for lithium iron phosphate.
Like, oh,
It says that it is a type of lithium ion battery, so it's a little bit of a. The language in the statute, we have the legislature to thank for that, obviously.
yes,
But
you use Google AI, which very vague when it comes up with an answer, can come from a Reddit forum where somebody just said something. It's
Right,
not
fix it.
always the most accurate.
So just a quick
Right,
aside
so you
about
gotta look at
AI,
The sources as well.
You now have to do more research.
check the source when you use AI of any kind. You wanna check the source always. So it's wicked helpful. I mean, it comes out with, but you wanna just, in the corner, there'll be that little click link. You wanna follow that link, or at least hover over it so you see where it's supposed to lead to. And if it's gonna lead to Reddit, next. Don't go to Reddit for your information.
But now you're saying to the general public who have problems with technology that how far into this are you going? How much research is the average
Right.
transfer station attendant have to go through to figure this out? Because how many Google, how many lithium batteries are out there? So when you go lithium polymer, lithium cadmium, lithium manganese,
Especially when some of them try to hide them in the trash bag when they don't know.
Yeah. So you're gonna wanna encourage folks to take their batteries to the household hazardous waste day. Because those transporters will separate things out and put them into recycling, or put them into solid waste, or incinerate them, or wherever it needs to go. But I realize that, you know, when you're standing there in the field, you got a long line of folks that are ready to drop off their trash, you're not gonna be able to make those decisions. So if it's rechargeable, it's recyclable. When in doubt, recycle, send it to recycling. And he's chafing this. We mentioned that the ban was probably, oh, wait a minute, I think I went to the wrong place. Because of the property. Oh, I didn't realize this was set up this way, thank you. So if certain batteries are put in the trash or mixed in recycling, they can get punctured or crushed, causing damage to the internal structure. So go right through. The problem with lithium ion batteries is that they're very reactive and they're subject to, think of them as like a high maintenance scrap. They need certain temperatures. They get very irritable if it's too cold or if it's too hot. They don't want to be crushed. They want to have plenty of space. They don't want to be punctured. They need their own little space to be in, otherwise they're highly unhappy. And the reason why they are unhappy is because they have this chemical structure which can create thermal runaway. And the health and safety of your waste haulers, yourselves, and the rest of the public is at risk if we have fires. So this is an example of thermal runaway, which can happen with lithium ion batteries. High temperature, explosive fires, toxic fumes, smoke, it's difficult to extinguish and it can reignite. So I was talking to some of the guys at our spill response unit, and they said, because I was like, are the local fire departments trained? Because we're gonna have more lithium ions and stuff. And so sometimes the fire departments will come and put it out. And sometimes they'll just seal off the perimeter, keep everybody out and let it burn. Because sometimes these fires will put them out with huge amounts of water, like enormous amounts of resources have to go into putting these fires out. And they think it's over and it can reignite. And those fires like that happened in California. And this is the Keene transfer station. This photo is by Captain Joshua Brooks. They had over $400,000 worth of damage in that one. So here's some safe battery handling tips. And I don't know if you guys can see this, but I tried to get everything on one page so that it was fairly clear. You want to check the expiration dates on the batteries if you can. If the battery's expired, it's more likely to be reactive. If you want to just keep it simple, just make sure the tops and bottoms are taped. You can also clear bag them. If you have a bunch of bags on hand, I don't know how many of you guys do. At our transfer station, we've got one retired guy who almost practically volunteers his time at our transfer station. And he does not have little plastic bags on him. So we need to have, make sure folks know to take them. Over there on the table, Paige set out some materials that you can hand out to your folks, your residents, and say, read this. And it's got lists of places where people can take their batteries to recycle, so it doesn't fall on you guys.
If you are gonna accept them, you wanna store your batteries in a cool, dry place, again, not open to water or precipitation of any kind. You don't wanna let the batteries contact each other. You store them where they won't get dropped or punctured. And if you have a DVR, which is damaged, defective, or recalled battery, you wanna keep them in a non-reactive material. So, do any of you guys have like a bucket for batteries that are corroded with some like sand or kitty litter in it? If you don't, I would have. I could just keep like a 5-gallon bucket, put a bunch of sand in it. And if someone gives you a battery that looks like it's corroded, you wanna just dump that in there, and put some more sand on the top, because you don't want it to go anywhere. One of the guys at DES, his son was working on something. And the battery started like expanding and stuff, so he called the fire department, and while the fire department was coming, he went outside. Put it in a container or something and put baking soda on top. That worked. I think sand's a little cheaper, kitty litter is probably a little bit between baking soda and sand, so. But you might wanna just keep a bucket just so you're ready in case anything happens. I don't mean to be alarmist about this. Lithium ion batteries are everywhere. They're in everything that we have. Like, they're in my watch, they're in our phones, they're in our electric vehicles, they're in mobility devices, they're in hospitals, they're everywhere, and they're usually very reliable. It's just there's gonna be times when they're not, and we wanna make sure we know what to do when they're not. And if anything's smoking, what do? Call the fire department. They're the experts, they're the ones that we want to see when something's on fire. If not, keep that 5-gallon bucket, and you wanna limit your storage time. So when you have batteries, Mike's gonna talk about, how much time you can actually store them. Most of you were probably we talked about very small quantity generator area. But my advice to you is when you have batteries on site, just get them off as soon as possible. Get them to recycling, get them to your household hazardous waste operators to take off site, get them off, so you don't have to worry about keeping them between their ideal temperatures and keeping them safe from being crushed or punctured. Get them off site as soon as you can. Yes, question.
Yeah, just on the sand bucket. Alright, so we have something that's corroded. Should go in the sand bucket. Makes sense because we wanna control that, whatever is coming out of the battery, right? It's hazardous waste at that point, because it's exposed chemicals coming out of a battery, right?
Yes.
Okay, so if the battery is not tampered with in any way, it's universal waste.
Yes.
But if it's exposed in any way, just kind of like CFL tubes, now it's a hazardous waste.
Yes.
Okay,
So, like I mentioned before, if you don't know what your battery is and really, it doesn't say anything on it, you don't have any idea, send it to recycling or transport off site. For your household hazardous waste, your transport. Why recycle? Ideally, you're gonna recycle for safety. You wanna make sure that everyone stays safe. You don't want anyone to experience explosions and have someone impacted and have to deal with a fire like Keene and Nashua have. Another reason is for the toxicity. A lot of batteries, as we know, have tons of chemicals in them, which are, all natural, except for the fact that we can't breathe them in without getting very sick or ill. We don't want lead anywhere near us, or cadmium, or in the past, mercury or lithium. Legal compliance. July 1st, the legislature determined that we are to ban all disposal of lithium ion batteries from incineration or solid waste disposal. So we're gonna comply with that. We're all, citizens of New Hampshire, and so that's the law, and that's what we're gonna do. The last is environmental responsibility. So I used to live in, among other places, New Jersey. I spent some time in New York. I spent some time in Europe. I landed here in New Hampshire, and it is gorgeous here. We have the best lakes. We have clean air. We can farm. It's just great. We want to keep it that way. We don't want this like leachate coming anywhere near places where people want to swim or fish or anything like that. So that's the last reason. If you need some help, I put some of my cards out there. You can grab a card and call me up if you have a question. Or you can call our helpline where the people in my Huntsman Way section are super informed. It's 1-866 has waste with no E at the end. And you can tell them what your situation is and they will get you in contact with whoever you need to be in contact with to help you out. So you're not alone in this. I realize there's a lot of what ifs and unknowns yet, but there is help out there and feel free to call us if you. Now. I'm going to go on to battery terminal protection.
Makes sense. All right, so we're gonna switch gears a little bit and talk about the kind of a smorgasbord of different topics, battery terminal protection, battery embedded devices, and then we're gonna talk about vapes, because vapes are becoming a big problem. So first with battery terminal protection, Ian touched on this a little bit, and I think Matt had asked a question about taping. The most preferred method for protecting these batteries from shorting out when they're being transported is actually put them in a plastic bag. It's not always feasible. I think call to recycle, I'm not sure if those boxes come with bags, so you can actually bag them as you receive them. But that may not be the case for everyone, so option number 2 would be tape the positive terminal on the battery. You may not always be able to tell which is the positive terminal, so you could just tape all the terminals. Some batteries may not have visible terminals, or they may be in like slots that are kind of already protected. So it's gonna depend a little bit on the battery, but the idea is to do what you can to protect those terminals from shorting out, sparking, arcing, causing fire, or whatever. You know, if you get that in contact with another piece of metal or something else that could conduct electricity, that could be a problem. I think, Matt, you had asked a little earlier the question of, is it okay if a resident doesn't tape their battery? And, you know, for example, an alkaline battery, that just goes in the trash without being taped. I would say they are lower risk. Alkaline batteries typically are, you know, you've got 9 volt, but most of them are gonna be about 1.5 volts to 3 volts. Typically, they're not as big of risk. So if those end up in the trash without being taped, it's not the end of the world. Again, this is just kind of a risk mitigation strategy. It's gonna be more important with higher voltage batteries. So your lithium ion batteries, bagging them is definitely good practice if you have that available, or taping them. And it's important to use a non-conductive tape. Scotch tape isn't gonna do the trick. You're gonna want something like ideally a clear packing tape, something that's a little bit thicker, but it's still clear, so when it goes to the recycler, they don't have tape obstructing the labeling, so they can't tell what they're looking at. So that's, you know, those are just some tips for terminal protection. Are there any questions? Because I know we had a question earlier, but I'm not sure if there were other questions about that. It's not your last chance, so if it comes up later. All right, so we also, Ann mentioned the topic of DDR batteries, damaged, defective, or recalled batteries. You know, a burning battery is pretty easy to spot, but catching a battery before it lights on fire is just as important. So you can kind of, you know what to look out for before it catches fire. Oftentimes DDR batteries or damaged, defective, recalled there are visual cues that you can tell that this battery has definitely been abused, or it's already kind of in it's a sensitive state. It could potentially, you know, be subject to thermal runaway imminently. Some things to look out for would be swelling, especially LiPo batteries or lithium polymer batteries. Those are the kinds that you may not necessarily receive them individually as a battery. It may be embedded in a device. Lithium polymer batteries are essentially, they don't have a hard shell on them. They're basically like, think like, you know, Capri Sun has those juice boxes, juice pouches. It's kind of like if you were to take one of those juice pouches and use it as a battery. It's literally like a plastic pouch that has the battery in it. So it's very sensitive, and they can swell if there's some sort of internal problem with the circuitry. They can, you know, get fat, and actually, like, if they're embedded in a device, they may start popping out of the device. So that's a sign. You may see that the battery is discolored, probably from overheating. There may be corrosion. There may actually be smell. Some of these batteries can off gas, and those fumes can be dangerous and flammable. There may be loose or damaged wires, and you may also receive a battery from somebody who says, oh yeah, I dropped this, or, oh yeah, I was charging it in my garage during the middle of summer and it was like, 90 degrees in the garage. And started to smell something, while I was charging. And so, if you get clues like that there's something a little bit wrong about the battery, it's probably a DDR battery and it needs to be managed separately. You don't want to just put it in a bag and put it in your cult recycle box straight away. In terms of managing these, it's important to store them away from exits. You don't want them to become a problem where they do ignite and it's in the way of you being able to exit the building. That's not a good idea. You want them to be in a well ventilated area, preferably outdoors if you can, but protected and somehow undercover. And it's also important to put them in a container that is not going to be flammable. So a metal bucket or a drum or something like that might be a good idea. But like Ann said, filling it with some sort of non-conductive material that's also not flammable. So like a clay absorbent, like a kitty litter. You might use sand, you might use vermiculite, like for, folks use for gardening. There's also a product that is sold called Cell Block. And it's literally glass beads. It's designed to extinguish lithium ion battery fires, but it's also can be used for storage of sensitive batteries. Because once, if batteries were to be encased in that cell block, like in a container with this glass beads all around them, if they were to be subject to thermal runaway, they would melt the glass and it would essentially just encase it. So there are these products out there for sale. It's not likely that everyone's gonna have it on hand, but I just mentioned it. It's also important to be conscious of safety when you're handling these batteries. They could be subject again to, giving off fumes, or they could be leaking. So you probably want to wear gloves. You want to have some sort of eye protection so that if they were to combust or explode, like you're not going to be getting stuff in your eyes. All right. Let's talk about battery embedded devices, because that's a very common thing. You're not always just going to get somebody coming to you with a battery. You may have them coming to you with an electronic device that has a battery in it, some other device that has a battery built into it. So examples of battery embedded devices would be Bluetooth headphones, earbuds. I think we have an example we can talk about later. Portable speakers, electric toothbrushes, shavers, cordless vacuum cleaners, power packs, also known as like power banks. They're like literally like a battery charging, like they are a battery that stores energy so it can charge other devices. Toys and electric skateboards like hoverboards are also battery embedded devices. I'm actually kind of curious. Anybody in the room ever receive a hoverboard? Yeah. What did you do with it? Did you?
I sent it with our regular electronics.
You did, so your electronics vendor took it. Okay. That was just something I was curious about. Not sure if folks have had trouble with their electronics vendors.
Their coworker was like 70 years old. I don't even know what this thing is.
Yeah. It is.
Yeah.
Just did they give you the whole thing or?
Yeah, whole thing.
Yeah.
Right. So that's one thing to keep in mind with these battery embedded devices. A lot of times they're not designed to be taken apart. The battery is kind of integral. It's built into the device. So it's not a great idea to encourage residents to take apart the device if it's not easily dismantled, something that can be dismantled. It's also a good idea for you guys as solid waste operators to not try to tinker with them too much, try to take the battery out. It's better to just recycle the whole device, but you do want to check with your vendor, if it's an electronics vendor or an HHW vendor, depending on the item, make sure that they do take them. So. Yeah, and hoverboards years ago, back around like 2015, they were big. They were in the news all the time. Big problems with them because they were catching fire. There was just the market started to take off. They were being built overseas in factories that weren't manufacturing batteries to certain specifications, like the UL, the Underwriters Laboratories testing program that kind of make sure that electronic devices are safe. So a lot of these kind of don't wanna say black market hoverboards were on, being sold, but they were literally, being developed by companies that had no oversight. And sometimes they contained batteries that, were not manufactured properly, so that, folks would have problems with them charging. Or while using the device, they would overheat and then suddenly catch fire. So there's a lot of hoverboards in the news, probably 10 years ago. Doesn't seem to be as big of an issue now. I think that market is a little bit more regulated. But yeah, so just an aside on hoverboards. All right, so we talked about battery embedded devices. Another example of a battery embedded device would be a vape or an electronic cigarette. A lot of times these devices are rechargeable. And again, the battery is not designed to be removed from the device. Vapes pose their own set of challenges due to the fact that they contain not only a battery, but also nicotine. And nicotine is a highly regulated hazardous waste. It's actually known as acute hazardous waste, which has special regulations that need to be followed when managing acute hazardous waste. So they're kind of a double whammy. They've got the battery, which is banned from disposal, and they've got an acute hazardous waste in them. And households typically, under normal circumstances, a household is not subject to hazardous waste regulations. So there's actually a loophole where if it's generated by a household, they can typically put it in the trash. If it would be regulated by a hazardous waste or regulated as a hazardous waste for a business or an institution, households can kind of get away with that loophole and throw it in the trash. The problem we're running into is that this lithium-ion battery disposal ban bans disposal of the battery. So now if we've got vapes that contain a battery, that household exemption for hazardous waste is not working out so great, because technically the household shouldn't be throwing it in the trash because of the battery. So some batteries can be separated, or the nicotine containing cartridge or pod can be removed, but that's not always the case. So some guidance relative to these devices, and this is, again, thinking about a household resident, somebody who generates these, what kind of advice might be helpful for them in terms of managing. So if they have a vape where the cartridge that contains the nicotine can be easily removed, then what they should do is they should recycle the device that has the battery and take the cartridge or the pod out. And that if the cartridge is empty, that can go in the trash. So the resident can throw it in the trash. If it's partially full, you might encourage them to bring it to the HHW event. That's whenever the next scheduled one might be. That might not always be ideal for residents because of timing. So again, a household could throw that item in the trash. That doesn't mean that solid waste operator can throw it in the trash, however. So I just want to be clear on that. The household, the person that has this item that's generating it as a waste could throw that cartridge in the trash. But if they hand it to you and say, hey, what can you do with this? And you take it, you can't throw it in the trash, because that household exemption doesn't apply to municipalities, solid waste facilities, other institutions. So that's something that we're going to get into a little bit more. This is more of a problem with disposable vapes, which are very, very common. Disposable vapes are not necessarily just single use. They do have a rechargeable battery in them, but they're not intended to be dismantled or refilled in most cases. Like, you can't just take out a cartridge and put a new cartridge in. They're kind of sealed units. So the device and the cartridge are all part of one device. You can't really take them apart. So as with battery embedded devices we discussed, it's important, don't disassemble them, don't crush them. Should try to recycle the device as a whole if possible. But the problem is that, again, these are very specific. There's a very specific problem with vapes because of the nicotine and the fact that it's acute hazardous waste. So management options for these disposable vapes. So if you can't take that cartridge out, what's the advice for the resident? Well, the advice is wait and bring it to your household hazardous waste event, which again, can be problematic because of timing. You might say, well, I just missed it, it was 2 weeks ago, and now I have to wait 6 months or 8 months or 10 months. So that may not be satisfying for them. The other option is that residents give it to the solid waste facility, so the operator accepts that item. But that comes with new responsibilities, because the solid waste facility would then become a hazardous waste generator. I see a hand there.
All these smoke and vape shops, can't you make it so they have to take them back when they're empty? When the battery's no good?
So it's interesting you mentioned that.
There's like 8 of them around here.
It's interesting you mentioned that. There's no law in New Hampshire that tells them to take them back.
Should be a requirement if they're gonna sell them.
But Maine actually just passed a law, and I don't know if it's been signed into law by the governor yet, but they actually just passed a law that creates a stewardship program, so basically, EPO for vapes. So that manufacturers of those vapes would then be responsible for managing them when they're at end of life. So something like that, if they did it in Maine because they have a law, something like that in New Hampshire would probably take some sort of law as well. So again, we recognize this is a unique problem, because of the battery ban. So that's why we wanted to discuss it. And again, if a solid waste facility operator accepts the vape, starts collecting vapes, that means the facility is subject to hazardous waste generator rules. So it's separate from solid waste rules. It's a whole separate section. So let's talk a little bit about some requirements that might apply. So if, hypothetically, there's nothing that compels you to take these vapes. But in order to comply with the battery disposal ban and make sure that residents have options, some towns have been asking us, like, what happens if we take vapes? Or they started taking vapes and they're like, now what do we do with them? So that's part of the reason why we want to talk about this. So if you take vapes at your facility, you become a hazardous waste generator. There are different levels of generators, and they go from very small quantity generators, or PSQGs, to small quantity generators to large quantity generators. So there's kind of 3 tiers, and those tiers are largely dependent on how much waste you accept. How much hazardous waste you accept, or tier. So we mentioned that nicotine is an acute hazardous waste. Under the New Hampshire hazardous waste rules, which are also kind of promulgated under EPA requirements for hazardous waste, the generator status for the threshold for very small quantity generators and small quantity generators are the same when it comes to acute hazardous waste. You have 2.2 pounds of acute hazardous waste, and that's the maximum quantity that a very small quantity generator or small quantity generator can accumulate at any one time. Once you pass that 2.2 pound threshold, that triggers you to become a large quantity generator. So there's really, that 2.2 pounds is kind of that's the magic number, so to speak, in terms of where you fall as a generator. It's important to note that with this 2.2 pounds, what that applies to is not the weight of the device. It doesn't apply to the weight of the vape device with the battery, with the casing. It only applies to the residue that's in that cartridge, the e-liquid that has the nicotine in it. So if you've got a full device, like it's, somebody disposed of it and it has a full cartridge, that's obviously gonna count more towards that 2.2 pounds than an empty device. So you could probably accumulate more empty devices than full devices and not pass that 2.2 pound threshold.
Question.
Yes.
Okay, so that was what I was wondering about, was that threshold, because if we talk about collecting that at a hazardous waste event, what does that make our hazardous waste hauler deal with at that point? Because if they collect a large quantity of nicotine that's an acute hazardous waste. And they go above that 2.2 pound threshold, are they within regulation at that point to transport it, to dispose of it?
So that threshold is really only in terms of, how you categorize generators.
Okay,
It doesn't necessarily apply to collection events that are hosted by a registered, transporter.
okay,
Because in that case, the transporter, I believe, is really the entity that would be regulated. It's not like, because it's hosted at a municipal facility, that the municipal facility is the generator. It's kind of like the transporter is the intermediary that accepts those materials.
I guess the point I'm trying to make is, do they have a threshold of how much they're able to accept at one given time?
I don't know that. I don't know if you know anything about
I feel
transport.
like ideally you wanna collect as much as possible at those events,
For sure,
right?
for
So,
sure, but I'm just wondering if they're out of regulation by hitting a threshold.
So for this, it's 2.2 pounds of acute hazardous waste, and it's just the residue inside. So now we were talking about this before, because Mike was trying to do a back of the envelope calculation as to, well, how many vapes is that? And so he came up with what, about a couple thousand? So
Wow.
we did an AI, so and plugged it in and said, you know, I plugged it in, I said, using like the most popular vape out there. Give me a calculation of it as to how many vapes you would have to collect in order to meet or exceed 2.2 pounds of acute hazardous waste. And it came up with something, it's a big wide span, so, but still it's something. The minimum was 1,600 vapes and the maximum was 4,000. Because remember, there's so many variables as to how much nicotine is in the original, how full it's gonna be when it gets thrown out. But still, that's a lot of vapes. So you would have to collect an enormous amount of vapes in order for any of these.
We have all the marijuana vapes from all the dispensaries too.
Well, that's another.
We definitely didn't touch it.
Yeah.
but I don't know if there are like.
They're not regulated as acute hazardous
If
waste.
they take like 5 pounds, like if like more regulations would come into place, because I don't know.
That's something.
That's what you're asking,
I can look that
Yeah,
up.
that is what I'm asking.
Okay,
I
so
don't know.
you're asking about the transporter.
Yes.
Okay, I'll look it up and get back to you.
Just as the person that coordinates that event,
I know.
you know, and I talked to a waste hauler, are you gonna be able to accept everything that comes in through the door? For
Right.
residents bringing it in, or is there a threshold, or?
Well, that's like their job, like that's their MO, so it's like, you know, I think this is more for facilities that are not taking it and immediately moving it, you know, like whereas an HHW event. You're collecting it, you're immediately managing it properly, like you kind of have all the tools, but yeah, anything with that, that's just kind of my. instinct, I guess. But, I don't know, do you think that's kind of,
So Paige and I don't work in the hazardous waste management.
I knew that
We're
wasn't
not
really
experts.
your category,
Yeah,
I knew that wasn't really your category, but it's a question I
do,
wanted
but I
to
work in
pose.
pollution prevention, so I'm not really steeped into the
Okay.
regs. And the regs are changing, just so you know, August 1st. So make sure when you're looking up yeah. Look up the hazardous waste regs, go to the 8.1 ones and not the pre-8.125 ones.
yeah, we can look that up and get back.
Yeah,
Because that is a good
definitely.
question.
If I can answer it today, I will. I have to go through my regs.
Yeah, no worries, I just wanted to pose that question.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. Sorry, Mike.
Yeah, no worries. So we're gonna go through a hypothetical. So say a municipal facility collects vapes and is a VSQG, a very small quantity generator. So again, they're gonna be under that 2.2 pounds threshold. They may accumulate on an ongoing basis, so any amount of time greater than 90 days, they can collect and keep collecting. Provided that they submit notification to the department, so they have to kind of notify the department that they are conducting hazardous waste management activities. And that is submitting a form, literally, and then once that form is processed by the department, you get an EPA ID number as a hazardous waste generator. Also, again, they need to accumulate this acute hazardous waste, these vapes, so that they don't exceed the 2.2 pound threshold at any one time. They need to maintain spill and fire control equipment within 100 feet of the collection area. And they also need to maintain a 2-foot access pathway, at least on one side of collection containers, so that they can inspect and make sure that there aren't any problems. The facility would also need to comply with the accumulation requirements, which are in the hazardous waste rules. These are rules for the types of containers that you can store these items in, how you label those containers, that kind of stuff. And then they also need to ship the acute hazardous waste via a licensed hazardous waste hauler or transporter, or self-haul within 90 days of accumulating that 2.2. So once they reach that 2.2 pound threshold, they have 90 days to ship that amount off-site. So these are just some of the additional requirements that would be triggered if you were to collect vapes. Again, there's nothing that compels you to do it, just wanted to mention it, and this is not an all exhaustive list, this is just some of the highlights from the hazardous waste rules, and I'm only talking about a very small quantity generator. If you were to collect over 2.2 pounds, that would then trigger you as a large quantity generator. There's a whole host of other requirements that apply to large quantity generators. Most towns probably wouldn't be super interested in trying to do that. But there are like training requirements. You need to have a certified hazardous waste coordinator that's managing collection, and there's reporting requirements and all sorts of other stuff like that. So there isn't really enough time to get into all of those details, but I did want to just make you guys aware that, generally aware that there are additional requirements once you start accepting vapes. Again, because it's an acute hazardous waste, it's kind of a whole different ballgame. This is very different than, you know, a lot of facilities will take universal waste, so they'll take fluorescent bulbs, batteries of different types, cathode ray tubes or CRTs,
Increase.
mercury containing devices. They may take antifreeze, they may not. But the common things are like mercury containing devices like thermostats or fluorescent bulbs or batteries or CRTs. A lot of solid waste facilities in New Hampshire commonly accept those items. The difference is that those are universal waste. So they're actually managed, they can be managed under a much more lax set of requirements. Doesn't trigger the need to be a registered hazardous waste generator and be subject to the, you know, the manifesting requirements. You could filling out manifests and shipping it to, you know, within certain timelines. I mean, hazardous, universal waste, I think it's a 1 year. Generally speaking, you want to ship it every year. You don't want to sit on it for longer than a year, but I'm not sure if that's 100% accurate and for universal waste. With this, there isn't a specific timeline for when you need to ship the vapes. You can ship them more frequently. You don't have to wait till you get to 2.2 pounds. But you have that maximum quantity threshold before you need to ship if you want to stay a very small quantity generator. And you have, once you've accumulated 2.2 pounds, then you have a 90-day period to ship that acute hazardous waste offsite. So again, very specific to vapes, but I just wanted to get into that. Oh, and there's one bullet point at the bottom. You got to maintain records. So there's additional, you know, requirements for maintaining records. So it's not impossible, but it does create a different level of requirements that you need to comply with. So here's the $1 million question, and we talked about this already a little bit. How do you know when you've accumulated 2.2 pounds of acute hazardous waste? Again, if it's just the residue inside the vape, it's not the weight of the vape device, it's just the residue inside the cartridge. And I recognize there are many types of vaping devices. They all have different capacities. Some may be 2 milliliters, some may be 5, some may be 20 milliliters, some may be 40 milliliters. So, you know, there's a wide variety. A lot of these disposable vaping devices, you can't take out the pod to look at it. There's no way to visually see like how full they might be. So we're actually checking with EPA to see, because I think they provided some guidance on this in the past. Trying to estimate, like giving you a ballpark figure of like how many vapes, if they're nearly empty, how many nearly empty vapes would equal to 2.2 pounds. We suspect that it's probably many hundred vapes, like several hundred vapes, or possibly more. But in the meantime, we're just waiting to get some confirmation from EPA. This is one of those things where it's not really a requirement that New Hampshire has created, it's a requirement created by EPA. And how they classify hazardous waste, so. I would say if you have specific questions about wanting to collect vapes at your facility, you can call that hazardous waste helpline. That DES has, that's the 1-866 has waste without the E at the end, or I have the number written out there as well. They're available Monday through Friday, 8 AM to 4 PM. And there's always somebody there that can, they don't know the answer, they'll get up to the right folks. So. Yeah, vapes. We are aware of some hazardous waste transporters that have said that they accept vapes, or there are cases where they accept vapes in other states. One of them was called Heritage, or I guess paid when you looked it up, it was, they had a website, but
Yeah.
their name was actually Arkwood Environmental. Nightshade, MOI, Environmental, Republic Services. Oh, Tredevi, is it, did we confirm that Tredevi will take vapes?
In Vermont, they said they did.
Okay,
Will they for you?
and Veolia.
Okay, they will.
But it's
So-
another separate cost.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, they're separate. So, yeah, vapes they're tough. And I recognize that there aren't any good answers, but that's part of the reason why we want to just make you guys aware of some of the challenges that exist with managing those kinds of devices. Like I mentioned, state of Maine has already looked into this and has proposed a law that has been passed for stewardship, a stewardship program to take vapes back at the end of life, so that they can be recycled. That may be something that needs to be considered for New Hampshire, because it's becoming a big topic of, you know, we're getting questions from municipalities, from other entities, we're getting questions from the legislature. So the more that folks talk about it, maybe something will happen at the legislature. Maybe we'll see. We'll see. But you know, right now, it's not a perfect world. So.
Unfortunately, they weren't thought of like when the lithium ion battery ban was, put forth. It wasn't, I don't know. And now it's like all we can talk about. When are we talking about the lithium ion ban? Because they're so prevalent, so.
There's always unintended consequences. That's one of the things that I'm learning is, state law is never 100% all the time. Can't cover all possible such scenarios and situations. So this is one of the things that we've, now encountered. I don't think the legislature ever thought of it or even contemplated that vapes would create this kind of headache for folks. So.
If it is a headache for you though, have your municipalities reach out to your legislators, because we can't write the rules, but your legislators can. So if enough people are upset about it, the legislature, they can do something, right?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
hope or not.
I
So.
think we do have time for a break. If we
Yeah,
want to, a little, like 5 minutes, if people wanted to.
Well, I just wanted to check if there are any questions in general, anything we've talked about up to this point, and then maybe we can do like a 5-minute break, Matt.
Sure, for sure.
But just want to open it up to any questions if there's.
So these vapes, they can be e-waste, but they're also hazardous waste.
Yes, they're challenging because the battery,
Right.
there's the battery that's banned from disposal, but they also have the acute hazardous waste if they're a nicotine vape. And so that makes it more challenging. Like I mentioned before, a household could legally throw hazardous waste into the trash. They have this household hazardous waste exemption. That's why the state, has periodic household hazardous waste collection events to try to give folks an option for that. But under normal circumstances, there's nothing to stop somebody from throwing it in the trash. Problem is now, these devices are banned from disposal because of the battery. That's what creates the challenge. Because of that lithium-ion battery, they can't just legally throw it in the trash.
So how would Tredevi treat it, as hazardous waste
Correct.
or e-waste?
Hazardous waste, there would have to be, that's one of the things is like, so North Coast Services, which is a e-waste vendor in the state. They wanted to take vapes, but because of the hazardous waste regulations, it's not something that they're able to get into. So that's why right now the best solution is to direct residents to take their vapes to a household hazardous waste event. Good luck with the vacant community is probably not the type of people that are gonna go to a household hazardous waste. Yeah, good luck. So, again, I recognize there's no perfect solutions right now, but this is the reality that we're faced with. So. Other questions, maybe not on vapes?
I have one more.
Sure.
So the batteries that you were mentioning that are like a Capri Sun,
Yeah, the lipo, light lithium polymer.
yeah, lipo. What sort of device would you find that type of battery in?
A lot of cell phones use them, a lot of
Really?
laptops. It's a very attractive battery format because it can be very thin. So it doesn't take up a lot of space, so that's why they're used a lot of times in cell phones. You might recall. Oh gosh, I don't remember how long ago it was now, it might have been 10 years ago, where Samsung had this whole crisis with their phones were swelling, the batteries were swelling, those are LiPo batteries. I don't remember how long ago that, I can't keep track of it might have been 5 years ago, it might have been 10 years ago, but there were smartphones that Samsung was selling and folks were it was like overheating in their pocket and they were getting burned on their legs.
Yeah, oh, that was that battery.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a LiPo battery, they're very prone to swelling because they don't have a hard rigid case.
So are they popular now or are they like kind of phasing out?
I would say they still exist, they're because of the form factor, they're used a lot of times for laptops or like thin devices. Cause you can get like a really flat, like wide battery, but very flat. Thin.
Thank you.
Yeah,
DeWalt uses a new pouch battery for their tools. They call it lithium ion. That's similar.
they call it lithium.
They call it a lithium ion battery, but it's pouch cells instead of,
Yeah, the terminology is it can be very loose. LiPo is a type of lithium ion battery, so again, kind of think of lithium ion as like that umbrella term. There can be different varieties of lithium ion
well,
batteries.
then currently DeWalt selling them as a new thing.
Okay.
Batteries as a good one. So I'm going.
So I'm curious, it's a pouch, like you
Yeah.
buy it and it's a pouch, like it's,
No, it's within it, instead of being the regular, like a typical battery cell, it's pouches inside it stacked.
oh, interesting.
It's rechargeable.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's as a regular plug-in 20-volt battery. I probably got one in the truck right now.
Yeah,
So if it's rechargeable, is it recyclable?
So I feel
How do I
like,
explain this to all my employees?
It's rechargeable, it's recyclable.
To who?
It
Right.
is to the state of New Hampshire as of July 1. Lithium ion battery.
So I feel like that's like the number one takeaway. Like if it's rechargeable, it's recyclable through the North Coast or
Should that be or Veolia or
call
Heritage?
to recycle any of those.
yeah, in most cases, you're probably not gonna wanna use a hazardous waste transporter or lithium ion batteries, there are other options that are probably gonna be more cost effective.
Look at the templates that they put out though, those cardinals.
Yeah.
Okay. It's okay. No. Sorry, I work with Faith and I keep calling her, but anyway,
Wow.
but those pamphlets you can hand out to your folks and you can keep them yourselves, but they have some really good information on it, short and sweet.
Yeah, please take those back with you. I don't want to take any of them back. You guys all need to take stack with you.
So we gave a lot of those out at, we just had a hazardous household waste day, and we gave probably almost 1,000 out. No, it must have been, no, it couldn't have been that much, yeah.
That was a
We gave
lot.
a lot out.
It was a lot, yeah.
So, are we able to get, this PowerPoint like emailed to us?
They already sent it to me, so I have it.
Perfect, thank you.
Yeah, definitely, yeah, refer to this, you'll have access to it.
And we'll put it on our website so you can grab it.
So, what do you think, Matt, should we,
Let's take a 5-minute break.
say come back at
Yeah.
2:35?
2:35 sounds good.
228.
and, at the end, we can also talk about some of these devices and examples that, three of us have brought in. But, so I'm just gonna cover some resources for you guys to bring back to give to your residents, or just to use as like for your own education. So we've talked a lot about like HHW events, but how are people really supposed to find them? Everyone in here is from the Lakes region, I'm assuming, so you can go to the LRPC website. Hopefully your town websites have information about the Lakes region event, for residents to find, but we also on the DES website have an HHW page, and there's a link to a whole spreadsheet of like all the HHW events in the state. And contact information for how people can, call and ask questions. Will you take, this thing? Will you take batteries? Will you take vapes? So that is just one way to, for people to find out where their closest HHW event is. Oh, yes, so on that page as well, it's one of the ways you can get to our Managing My Waste webpage, which is specifically for residents to think about, things that they need to consider before taking, appliances to the transfer station, or fire extinguishers is one that we just put on there, as well as lithium ion batteries. We now have a blog on there about, with all different resources, covers a lot of the stuff that we talked about today. But it kind of fills a little bit of the gray area between solid waste, hazardous waste, and universal wastes. And some of the information could also be helpful for businesses and municipalities, but that's not really the primary audience that we're going for. Because, we have a lot of fact sheets and guidance documents that are for you guys, the regulated facilities. We were trying to make something a little bit more universal as much as we can for residents, but every town does stuff a little bit differently, so our underlying message for every blog is please always check locally. Your towns might do it a little bit differently than, the next town over, but generally, these are things to consider with construction and demolition debris. Again, appliances, electronics, textiles, clothing. I mean, at this point, there's probably about 40 different wastes. We're working on one for boats and boat wrap, railroad ties, and like creosote wood. So we're trying to keep updating it, and even the existing blogs up there, we'll add new resources. We'll kind of adjust some of the language if we think it's a little bit confusing. So something we're always kind of working on. This is a kind of a snapshot of what it looks like. It's set up in like two ways, so you can look through it A through Z alphabetical list and look that way. But we also have corresponding, blogs with pictures. So if you're looking for something for food, maybe looking at it in a list, you won't find it, but seeing a picture of it, you're like, yeah, that's what I'm looking for. I want to learn how to compost, or, I have a couch I need to get rid of, so maybe I should click on that blog. Just kind of catering to different learner styles. And we have one on HHW, yes.
I just wanted to say that the hazardous waste section is updating their section, so things that are going to be concerning the large and small quantity generators, they're currently being updated so that it reflects the new rules that are going to become in effect on August 1st. So if you're gonna print something out, wait till after August 1st to do that. So this is a chance to get all of these stuff up.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, so with new rule changes, website changes. Other resources that, if you, some towns have linked to the Managing My Waste page on their website. You can also link to some of these specific to batteries. Call to Recycle has an Avoid the Spark campaign with like social media posts and like catchy phrasings that, you might want to use. The National Fire Protection Association has a whole website on like e-bike battery safety, scooters, hoverboards, I believe, or maybe that's the next website I was gonna mention, but theirs focuses mainly on like those types of medium format batteries, or like e-bikes and scooters. But the EPA, and Ann had mentioned, the EPA resources that they talk about used lithium ion batteries and battery recycling and why it's important. But also, you know, you might choose to share different articles on your website. We wrote one for the New Hampshire Municipal Association about the disposal ban, but also you may consider just posting these search engines, just, you know, so people kind of know that that's a pretty comprehensive resources like Call to Recycle, Earth 911. They're very, they really seem to get them all. Even transfer stations are on there, but they'll say like only for Laconia residents or only for Alton residents or, so they're just good things to kind of, point people to. This is it, the Electrical Safety Foundation and REMA, so REMA is the Recycled Materials Association. Were they, what was their previous name? ISRI, yes.
Do describe recyclers.
Right, they're actually, REMA is currently doing a training with Tara right now about fire prevention and safety at transfer stations. So that was today and yesterday. I'm pretty sure that those are gonna be recorded and available on the SWAT channel. And so they came in, did a training about fire safety, so it kind of goes hand in hand with some of these resources that they put together with SB, yeah, the Electrical Safety Foundation. So they partnered to make all these different fact sheets about, you know, fire response, safety, how to recycle batteries, different like considerations for how to store your batteries and charge them. This is just a screenshot from the New Hampshire Recycles Battery Toolkit, you know, which we also, everything we're talking about is kind of cross-linked on our managing my waste page. But just to kind of show, like, you can get to all these different fact sheets. They're pretty, you know, short, just one pagers, kind of covering the basics of like what to consider when charging your bike. Or just like different battery certification symbols to become familiar with. The Call to Recycle also has information about e-bike battery safety. And the National Fire Protection Association has fact sheets. So there's really so many different resources out there. These are just some of them. Kind of leaving it up to you guys to shop around and figure out what kind of resources you want to link to on your website or print out and give to people. You know, maybe you're seeing a lot of questions about e-bikes come in and your operators are having to address those questions. So maybe you want to have more e-bike battery information. You know, there's a lot out there. One of the things I just mentioned and Mike has talked about a little bit was battery certifications. More of a consumer, just something to be familiar with, that these different battery certifications indicate that, you know, a battery's been tested, it's up to the standards for, you know, manufacturing standards, and that it can be sold in different geographic regions. So some of them are pertain to like being able to sell them in Europe or like France or the US. Some of them are more like international symbols. I have all their names written down, but honestly, you're not gonna remember any of them. So more just like things to look for. And you know, since the reliance on batteries has increased so much, you know, manufacturers were seeing that they're cutting corners. They're not necessarily spending the money to get their batteries certified. So that leads to issues with, you know, more batteries overheating, they're being recalled, kind of landing in that DDR category that Mike had described. So they're either recalled for fire hazards, fire risks, you know, risk of serious injury, however the company wants to phrase it. It's the matter of fact is that the battery is defective, it's not, you know, working properly. There's a general website, CPSC, Consumer Product Safety Commission, I want to believe, but they have all types of battery recalls, and these are just some of the ones that I pulled from, just because, you know, laptops, lawnmower batteries, power banks, you know, some of these are sold by the millions. And it's not, we're not asking you to like, okay, go on and check to see if your battery is recalled, but it's just more of, if your battery starts to overheat, you know, it might be worth just checking the website, looking up the, you know, manufacturer name and seeing if it is a recalled battery. So just kind of a resource to be aware of, maybe give out to people if they're saying that they're having problems with their e-bikes, you know, just on July 17th, that e-bike company BB. You know, this was from that website I just listed, but they had a recall because the batteries that they purchased from China, I believe, they put those batteries into these bikes that they were manufacturing, and these were even sold on that BB company website, like as well as Amazon, Walmart, you know, Wayfair, Wish, some of those like Temu fast product manufacturing, you know, sites. And you know, they're having to recall them because they were just super cheap, put them in the bike, and now people are having all these issues with them, so. Just kind of an example of how cutting corners on battery certifications can lead to these problems, and then it's an expense, you know, on the company. They have to stop selling those products, they have to then deal with those batteries, get them back hopefully, so. Little bit of a side, you know, talk, but just, you know, again, something to consider, for your own personal knowledge, but also just when chatting with your residents if they have questions. So, talking about resources in general, because the law does have a requirement for facilities and municipalities to provide some type of resource to their residents. So from the law, municipalities, solid waste districts, landfills, and incinerators must share educational materials about safe handling and recycling of lithium-ion batteries, lead-acid batteries, and electronics. Those, you know, other two are included in the same law, so this is lithium-ion batteries is now tied into this requirement. And you also must provide recycling opportunities for those batteries and devices as possible. So while there is a disposal ban in effect for these batteries and, you know, lead-acid batteries and electronics, your facility is not necessarily required to accept them, but you have to be able to tell your resident, you can take it here to another place, you know, to a Staples, to a Best Buy. So you have to at least be able to provide them with another recycling option if your facility chooses to not accept lithium-ion batteries or electronics and, you know, other things in the disposal ban. We have been getting calls, I think Ann's been getting calls that, you know, municipalities are saying, we don't wanna take these lithium-ion batteries, so we have to explain, okay, we have to at least point them somewhere. And that's where, you know, our brochure comes in that we've been pushing out to you guys, but also, a lot of folks have been asking for signage, which we've created, and it's now available for printing, either on our website or the New Hampshire Recycles website, New Hampshire the Beautiful website. You know, we really tried to get it out in different places so it's accessible to you guys. Again, the brochure, if you're not able to take the batteries, we have a whole list of basically exactly what's been on our slide, Staples, Best Buy, you know, the mail back program options, just Googling battery recyclers in New Hampshire. They might be able to go to a vendor like RM Recovery and be able to bring their batteries there directly. The sign on the New Hampshire Recycles website, this is their free sign library. You can print it as an A-frame, it can come in 25 by 36. And if you do print it as an A-frame, the New Hampshire the Beautiful program, you know, you can receive up to $100 in reimbursement through their reimbursement program. Has anybody done that? Done the reimbursement, like getting an A-frame, printing it, and then submitting a reimbursement?
You know, you can do.
Or did you know it was an option? Do you have A-frames at your facility?
Mhm.
Okay. Alright, I guess I should have started with that question. Yeah, just as I mentioned, New Hampshire the Beautiful website, and you can print it in different sizes, 18 by 24, if you want a smaller one. Bottom line, both of these, the brochure and the sign, are found on the Managing My Waste page, along with some of the other resources that I mentioned. And keep an eye out for guidance from us at DES about how to handle these products at your facilities, as well as how to manage vapes and DER batteries, because we are getting a lot of questions, and just being able to tell you guys just a lot of the stuff that's been in this presentation, but any new developments about vapes or DDR batteries that we can give you guys. And the Department of Safety is actually, their topic for this year's National Fire Prevention Week is all about lithium ion battery safety in people's homes. So charge into fire safety is their tagline. They're actually partnering with us at DES to put a lot of, just more outreach into the public and community and, through flyers, and the governor is gonna sign a proclamation. Just saying, this is National Fire Safety Week, the topic is lithium ion batteries, this is why. Trying to make it, more formal and really high level, and coming from the governor, could get more visibility from people. But we're going to be doing a lot of like social media posts, press releases. So it's nice that another state agency is like jumping on this and seeing that it's important to promote, and that lithium ion batteries are something that people really need to understand. How it can impact them and the facilities and the fire risks, it's like that, so. Yeah, that's really my spiel, and in terms of an activity, it was more off the cuff, I guess. So we brought in these different devices, and it was more or less asking you guys questions about whether or not you think that it would fall under the disposal ban for either electronics, batteries, if you need to recycle it, if it can go in the trash. So I don't know if you guys had anything else to add before we kind of do this, or if you guys have questions, you don't even have to talk about these batteries if you don't want to, or if you guys see anything up here and you're like, what do I do with that? Anything? Discussion, doesn't even have to be about anything. No.
Should people hand a bag of batteries like that to a transfer facility?
Should they, or will they? So if you can't see, there are button cell batteries mixed in with these, there's all pretty much AA and D batteries. No, but this is probably what you're gonna get. So, the button cell batteries should be taped up kind of like a ravioli. I think this is how Julie's representation. So then you're able to see like what, the different letter categories that Anna talked about, the different classifications of different button cell batteries, but no, these should be taped or bagged. But, and that could just be a matter of telling your residents next time you bring this, please bring them to me, and taped and or bagged. So then you guys don't have to deal with these with doing it. But yeah, these, I actually brought these in for my electronic device. Yes or no? Would it be covered under the disposal ban? Yes or no? They plug into a, I use them for my
They're
record player,
peripheral, right?
record player.
Peripheral.
So it's computer peripherals are what is covered under the electronics disposal ban. So I don't actually plug these into a computer. So that's kind of technically, these are not covered under the disposal ban for electronics. Because this isn't something I plug into my computer, so it's not a computer peripheral. It goes into the wall, so it has a plug.
That's how so.
So it's what?
So it's just like regular
Small trash.
Yeah.
household trash.
Yeah, you could still,
It can't be recycled.
you could still recycle it, but it's not like legally, if this ends up in the trash, it's not like, sort of before, it's not like going against the disposal ban, because it's not a computer peripheral.
What
So
about
like,
the, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
no, go ahead.
What about the plug-in part to it?
This,
Yeah,
Like the cord,
yeah,
Power cord?
the cord and the receptacle.
it could, I mean, it could be stripped, I know some facilities strip wires for like copper and whatnot, but,
I guess what I'm asking is that electronic waste, that piece right there itself, or is that still regular household?
all right,
trash?
so there's what the law says and then there's what the real world says.
Yeah.
Right, okay,
And according to the law, it's not, that cord is not an electronic device that would be banned from disposal.
Okay.
But in reality, it is. It's a, you know, it's got a transformer built into it. It is an electronic device.
I mean, it has a little UL certification as the trash can with the X on it, so.
Yeah.
Ideally, it should be recycled. But,
So how many of those things have the trash can with the X on it? Is that like something from, you know, like a certain date forward that they have that on there, or?
I was looking at my batteries at home, which I forgot to bring it, sorry. And one of them was dated 2021 and did not have the trash can on it, but the ones after that, so the other one expired in like it said 2033. So one I had is expired, and the 2033 one, which is still fresh, has the trash can with the X on it.
I don't know who requires the trash can with the X symbol. It might be like the EU. So if the product is marketed overseas, there might be certain types of devices or batteries that have to legally under EU law have to have that. But that trash can with the X through it doesn't really apply to the US, I don't think.
And interestingly, the two batteries I had, one was a Duracell battery, and they were both double A's. The Duracell battery had expired in 21. And the other one, also double A, was an Amazon's Basic. So neither one is rechargeable. And the Amazon Basic one had the garbage can on it, but the X both made in China. That helps.
Yeah.
I think the newer batteries are gonna have more information on it. The newer battery it said alkaline on it, and the older battery just said, and it was very attractive. It's like Duracell, and it had like the bolt and all that stuff, but it did not have all the information that the Basic.
okay, so what kind of battery is this?
We say lead acid? Yes, that's correct. This is
That one's lithium.
car starter, right? This one.
Starter, yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah, lithium ion, it does say on the back in, or does it, very shiny. This one, I thought, so this was my boyfriend's and he was like, I need to get rid of this, I'm like, I'm gonna bring it to my training instead. So, the tiniest of teeny little letters on the very bottom line, it does say, contains sealed lead acid, non-spill battery, must be recycled, blah, blah, blah. But, I mean, it's not super clear, so I mean, I don't know, I thought it could have been a lithium ion, but then again. I don't deal with car stuff, so that might be something that, you know, just as not a car person that. You know, I just wasn't aware of, but, yeah, so I guess different types of car starters, you know, Mike had brought this one in, lithium ion battery. We do have different examples of different types of vapes, so I think the Juul is probably one of the. I think that's the only one up here that actually has like a detachable pod, so. Things that have a pod, you know, this is still has half the liquid in it, this one. I think I picked it up off the ground at a festival, I was like, that's a dried out old pod. You know, just to kind of show the different examples of like. You know, something that's detachable, clearly has some liquid in it. As a household, you know, they could put this in the trash, but ideally bring it to a household hazardous waste event, and then you can recycle the battery. Versus something. Like this, it's just one. Like, you can't take it apart, oh, you can take it, oh, it's this one. Sorry, this other black. This one you can't take apart at all. And you can kind of see the center of it with, you know, how much liquid might be in it, but that's not always the case. This one, I mean, I don't, yeah. They're just all different colors. Some of them have screens now where you can play games on them. You can, you know, it's just, they're getting very complicated and complex and,
They have one. Your phone.
you answer your phone.
Laura said one of those lasts. I mean, I know it depends on the user, but is it a day, a week, a month?
Really?
Some of them are like 10,000 puffs, 20,000 puffs.
Like, what is it called, like how we're really drawing from it versus like.
They last a
So
while.
like a week?
No, it depends on how much.
Longer than that,
Yeah, I
probably.
mean, some of my friends go through them in like a week. And then they'll get, or they'll lose it, and then they just get another one, then they find it in their couch, you know, later on. the one that they tested was, so, weeks, I mean, a month, it really depends on if the person's really into their habit, if the person's trying to quit, you know, you can recharge it, so, I mean, they could last. Really depends on there's so many variables to it.
How much does one of those things cost?
Not that much.
I think I saw in the gas station, $10, yeah.
I mean, it's kind
So
of
it's like a
amazing,
pack
they
of
pack,
cigarettes.
like, or like 20 packs.
Yeah.
Pack of cigarettes, probably $10 too, something
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that, 10, 13.
I was just at Walgreens and they're $10 a pack.
Kind of amazing they passed the law for the hazardous waste nicotine going into quote unquote landfills, but they didn't pass a law putting it into your own body.
That's,
That's a.
we've been talking about that, we're like, oh, okay, so
Makes
people
no
put it in their
sense.
lungs, but if you put it in the trash, can't have more than 2.2 bags, like. Yeah, it's really, yeah, it's crazy. So, yeah, I mean, that's really it for us, I mean, unless anybody wants to talk about any kind of batteries that came in that kind of troubled you, or you had a little bit harder every time getting rid of, or like. Like the hoverboard thing, you know, we hadn't really considered the problems that they could cause, but, you know. Anything, any stories? Stories?
I actually told them to take that back to Walmart where they found it, they should be able to recycle the battery,
Back to
and
Walmart,
I never saw it again.
yeah, maybe Walmart,
sorry for,
As long as it's like Walmart, they bought it there, they should be able to recycle it.
Yeah.
Cause Walmart does the car batteries too.
right,
They also do motor oil too.
Walmart does?
Yeah, they take up to
Right,
5 gallons of motor oil,
Bring it
too,
in
yeah.
and take care of it. They put it in the carrot, then they automotive.
Some of them will do the recycling batteries too.
No.
But you gotta call like Guilford, which is not a super center,
No.
doesn't have that stuff. But maybe like Rochester, which is a super center, or the one in Tilton, which is the biggest one in our area, that one might. So sometimes when I get people calling, that's what I tell them to go do, check out Walmart, check out, you know,
Huh. Good to know.
yeah, thank you.
all right, and over to you, Matt.
Yeah, sure. Good. Every time I keep hearing hoverboard, I keep thinking of Back into the Future.
Yeah.
You know the scene when they're walking, when they're hovering on the pond and then they're like, I'm like, I'm thinking of that a lot. So I'm gonna set up my slideshow, but as I'm doing this, I wanna talk to you a little bit about, our current HHW collection, our current contract status and, how it all came to be. So, hold on just a second, I'm going to do this. Slideshow. Okay. So before I start, let's just talk about household hazardous waste in our collection, because we're right in the middle of it right now, right? And I know a lot of you are coordinators and been to the meetings and we've talked about that, so. Let's talk about what it was before 2023, what it is right now, and what our current contract is, okay? So we've had Tredevi as our waste hauler for several years. Our past contract, our current contract. In 2023, we renegotiated again for a new contract. We had a 40% increase in costs. Okay, it's a fixed price contract with a 3-year incremental 5% increase. That's what our contract is. The way it's paid for is it comes out of community tax dollars. So we ask every single fall for appropriations from each and every one of our communities. We say who wants to participate, who wants to pay into this so that your residents can come at no cost to the collection and dump at our site, right? We have a limit of 10 gallons or 50 pounds per household. We count a household by vehicles. So while we do that, what happens is we tell Tredevi in the beginning of the fall time that we suspect we're gonna have about, on average, 24 to 25 communities that are gonna participate. And then we have until the month of May to let them know what our current contract terms are going to be for that year. So once we find out, this is when I'm making all the phone calls, asking people, are you gonna participate? Did you get our appropriation letters? We talked to them about pricing, we talked to them about a historical use of the collection sites and how many people participated, what waste was brought in. When we finally figure out who's going to be into the collection, at that point, we give Tredevi our final number. This year it was 22 communities that are participating, okay? We have a matrix that we have set up for that 3-year fixed price contract. That we let communities know about the moment that we solidify that contract, because people have told us that they want to be able to budget. For their line items each and every year, so they know what they're gonna be paying for. And the reason why we do it that way is because the way that other household hazardous waste collections are set up. Is that they have a portion that they might pay as the community, and then the residents might come in and they might pay a price to participate. Other ways that I've seen it set up is that they don't know what their cost is gonna be for the season, and then they get an invoice at the end of the season, and it's paid by a per unit cost. Currently, the household hazardous waste product facility in Wolfboro is no longer operating the way that it used to operate. That might be news to a few folks. The coordinator this year passed away. We were working with the towns of Wolfboro and Alton to figure out a solution, because Wolfboro had that collection site at Wolfboro, where it was actually a brick and mortar facility. And then the town of Alton was a part of their contract with Clean Harbors, where they had a satellite collection and they brought their waste to that collection site. So now the town of Wolfboro and the town of Alton are participating in the regional HHW collection with Lakes Region Planning Commission. So the only opportunity we have for hazardous waste disposal within the Lakes Region communities is our regional collection. At our regional collection, we did ask, because this actually came up at one of our HHW coordinators meeting, I believe in April. Dates were brought up because we already were hearing about how it was gonna be handled as hazardous waste. Okay, we did talk to Tredevi about it. We asked them if they would collect things like that. They would, but at an additional cost. So at this moment in time, for our 2025 collection, we are not collecting vapes. Okay, and we do not collect any universal waste. So when we had that 40% increase and we talked to communities about the cost, one of the biggest cost factors that came up was paid staff workers that are at the collection to man the different collection areas that we have. So the very first year I participated in that, we had oil collection for some of the communities that collect oil as a host site, and they use it in their waste oil burners. We had Tredevi that took the liquids and the solids that came in that were hazardous waste, right? And then we had battery and CFL tubes and bulbs collection. Now, CFL tubes and bulbs, those have always come in, of course. But the batteries we were collecting were mostly single-use batteries that we found, because I took a whole entire inventory in 2022 to find out what kind of batteries we were actually accepting. I think it was 2022, right? Yeah, 2022 sounds right. And what we were doing for that collection of universal waste, okay, CFL tubes and bulbs and batteries, we didn't even include Tredevi on that cost. We had a separate contract with the state contracted lamps contract with NLR. And NLR were sending us a separate invoice for that. We decided as all of our communities, when we brought this up to everybody, we had a training on universal waste disposal. We inventoried how many transfer stations already accept universal waste. We had a unanimous decision that we were not going to include universal waste disposal in our current contract. Okay, so as it stands right now, in 2025, we only take hazardous waste. We do not take any universal waste or vape batteries or vape cartridges at our hazardous waste collection event. Now, with that saying, hearing this information, we want to revisit this, okay? We want to talk about that. This is why we have our HHW coordinator meetings, because you're the community liaisons that come to us and tell us what your needs are so that we can negotiate that in our contract. We might be able to figure something out for the following year. We are on our last year of our fixed price contract. Again, Tredevi has talked to us about this stuff. If we want to include that, we need to know about that ahead of time so that we can include it into the cost structure of what we're charging communities each year. Our contract is up for negotiation in 2026, which means we're gonna write another RFP to go out to bid, not just with Tredevi, but any waste hauler that might want to accept our bid. And we could potentially have a brand new contract, a different cost structure. We can look at other other regions and see how they structure their costs. And we wanna talk about that. But we need to know your feedback on what your communities want to accept. Because there is the factor of how we're going to pay for that. Okay? So, at our very last HHW coordinators meeting this year, October first, we wanna talk about our contract. So if you're interested in giving feedback on that and talking about how we can improve our collection, I would be more than willing to, talk about that with you guys, okay? Does anybody have any questions on our HHW collection, how it's run? Yes, Tyler.
Has Trinity put any input into the next contract? Maybe they wanna see something, because I mean, when we changed the dates, they were kind of pivotal in wanting that as well.
I think when it comes to dates, I think we've pretty much solidified what we're gonna do at this point, because that's what we talked about when we had Laconia last year in a different weekend. And then we changed it to the 20th this year, right? So I think we've pretty much solidified that that's the dates we're gonna stick with at this point, because there's other regions that have those HHW collections too.
It wasn't the dates, I just didn't know if they had any input for what they were looking for. Because we were looking for cost reduction measures to try to, because you, like we said, that was a big increase for all of us.
Sure.
Take that, and I didn't know if they had any input to help sway the numbers, because we didn't have a whole lot of, when we put the RFP out, we didn't have a whole lot of people.
No, we didn't.
Yeah.
No, we didn't. I think in order, we pay a premium, honestly, to have that fixed price contract so that people can budget for it. We probably could reduce our costs a little bit, but it would have to be a different cost structure, I think. And that's based on my knowledge of the last negotiation. We haven't talked about changing the contract this year, so I don't have any recent input from Tredevi on that. But I'm gonna talk to them about it for sure. And again, like I said, October first, that HHW coordinators meeting is the time that we definitely wanna talk about, like, what do we wanna see in the next contract? How do we wanna actually price it out? Our current contract also, I will say, does not allow for any outside communities to come participate, right? Other regional collections do. And that's always been a factor. What do I do if I live in the town of New Durham, but I live right next to Alton, but I can't go to Alton to go bring my HHW and I only have one potential collection in Rochester, right? That question's come up plenty of times. You know, so we gotta think about that a little bit more, about what we wanna see in our collection, I think. So any other comments or questions about that?
I have a side comment from the woman who just came in,
Oh.
that she has an event in here that they need to start setting up for at 3:30,
Okay,
which I know our training ends, but I just wanna let you
we'll
know.
get moving.
Okay.
You can let me know.
Yeah.
All right, 2025 Lakes Region Solid Waste update. So this is the current USDA grant that I'm working with. This grant is directly paying for my position. This is what I manage each and every year. Part of this is research. That's one of our scope of work items. Food waste composting research is what I wanted to do this year because we applied for a USDA composting and food waste reduction grant last fall, which we were awarded to start a pilot program in the Lakes region. So this research, while we were pending on that grant, was to help find out, do our residents, and I'll get into this, but do our residents want to see this kind of a approach to diverting waste from the waste stream? Would they want to participate? Is there any barriers? Okay. So why do we conduct this survey? So we did a survey, and I will go over the methodology for it, but these are the questions we wanted to ask, like I already kind of said. Do Lakes Region residents actually want to compost food waste? And do our residents see any obstacles with trying to accomplish that? What are the questions that we asked in the survey? These are some of the questions we asked. Are residents already composting food waste at home instead of throwing it away? Are there any local concerns with composting food waste? Are residents willing to do this if their transfer station offered it as another disposal option at the transfer station site? And are residents interested in participating in a potential pilot? And just so you know, who can guess that transfer station?
It is Guilford. It's Guilford. So who participated? So this is partly the methodology and who was a part of the survey. So the communities that participated were Ashland, Bristol, Guilford, Moulton Borough, and Wolfboro. Why were these the communities? Because these are the communities that partnered with us on this pilot program and the composting grant. So these are the communities that we targeted for this research. We did this for the entire month of April. The reason why we did April was better weather for travel, for sure. We had more people coming in during the month of April versus the month of March. And we were hoping to get a few more people that were maybe coming back from their winter areas, coming back into the spring to open up their homes so we can talk to them a little bit. Here's what we covered. How many residents took the survey? We had 333 residents that took this survey. The two methods that we used was paper. So I went and did a site visit at every one of the transfer stations and I handed people paper and they filled out the survey. We had a QR code that I posted at the transfer station, so I don't, if somebody said, I don't have much time to do that, grab your phone, scan it. They scanned it, and they did it while they were in the car. We had, the communities post the QR code and an online flyer on their website. And we had them talk about it with residents, so some residents heard about it at like town hall, and they scanned the QR code and they took it that way. Most residents, like I said, were engaged at the transfer station. Only 30 people took the online survey. Everybody else was in person and did the sheet of paper right there at the transfer station. And that is an example of what the little bottom left there, or the bottom right there is an example of what the online flyer looked like when we were advertising it. Do they currently compost at home? So this is what it looks like. Most residents do not currently compost. Most of them put it in their trash bag and throw it out. Some residents do compost at home. Mainly what they're doing is, you know, the traditional wood debris pile out in the back of the yard. Where they're doing like the lasagna method where they're just throwing stuff into a pile, maybe some yard trimmings, maybe some leaf trimmings, maybe a little bit of food waste. I did hear some people say food waste. But most of them said that they were interested in at least trying it at home if they learned about it. Residents had concerns with composting waste. I think a lot of these are everybody's concerns in this area. Bears and animal vandalism was definitely the first one that comes up. You know, you want me to put my food out back and then the bears are gonna come and they're gonna rip up the pile and they're gonna do all sorts of crazy things. It's one thing I heard. Another big concern, and I'll be honest, I didn't think of this one, until I started talking to folks, but they might live in an area where they can't compost. You know, they might be in an apartment building, they might be in a housing community development area where they're in an HOA and that's not allowed. Or it could be something along the lines of, I only got a little teeny tiny yard and I've already got everything inside that little yard and I don't have any room for a compost pile. Other folks said that's too much effort. I got that a lot too. Some of that has to do with, I don't have enough time in my day to do that. I work a lot and I just don't have time to manage a composting pile. Others like the convenience of just being able to bring it to the transfer station, or throwing it out. Some people said that it's an inconvenience for me because I'm not trying to garden. I don't have a use for that compost maybe. Some folks said it was messy storage. No, they didn't want to have to put it into a bucket and wait with it and store it than to bring it somewhere else. And then would you rather bring it to the transfer station? Some people did say if it was available at the transfer station, that would be the preferred method for me. Are they willing to compost their food waste at the transfer station? So the majority said yes. If that was an option where I could separate it out in a bucket and then walk it over to an area where we're gonna compost food waste, I would try it. Some of them said, again, the convenience factor of being able to just put it in the trash is a lot easier for me and I would prefer to do it that way. But I'll say this too, when I got that answer from folks, I would say to them, well, what if we showed you how to do it? What if somebody were to talk to you about it and you know, what if we talked to you about like the importance of diverting waste from the waste stream? What if it was pretty simple, straightforward?
you just put it in a bucket, you bring it, you dump it, that kind of a thing. I still think a lot of people are curious about it, they're willing to try it. Some folks said that they would say, well, I would like to give it a couple months at the transfer station and see how it works before I decide to dive into it, but for the most part, I would say people were pretty curious about it. I didn't think anybody really had any negative things to say about food waste composting, other than a couple concerns. Do residents want to participate in a pilot program? So this was the optional question that I had at the bottom of that survey, which was simply, if you want to, you can leave us your contact info at the bottom of the page, and we will use that to start a list for who we might give a phone call to for starting this pilot program. By the way, in the pilot program, we're gonna give you a free composting tumbler, and we're gonna bring in waste composting professionals to teach you how to do it properly. So when people heard that, they were quite excited about it for the most part. A lot of them were already having gardens, a lot of them might have been, well, I have all that waste, I'm just throwing it out in the woods anyways, I could probably make compost out of it. We also talked to them about how this is a better, soil supplement than maybe some fertilizers that we might use that can potentially have stormwater runoff and cause algae blooms. That is another thing that really piques people's interest, and I'm glad to hear that too, because a lot of people are aware that Lake Winnipesaukee has been getting quite a bit of the algae bloom each and every spring into the summertime, and people are seeing that, and now this is on their minds. So this is something interesting to think about, because maybe if they didn't see that, they wouldn't be as interested in this, but they see that day to day, and now they're thinking about, well, should I be using those types of fertilizers, or should I be thinking about where my water goes or what I'm doing in my garden? But anyways, the contact info, so each community, these are how many residents that we had that said that they would be interested in participating in the pilot program. And I'm estimating between 30 to 35 tumblers per community that we'll be able to purchase. So this is a pretty good starting point for the pilot program. And again, it's a pilot program. So if we find success with that, we want to continue to maybe apply for grant funding, expand the regional composting program to other communities. And really try to do some outreach on it and see if our area truly wants to, take that on. That is the only part with the composting. Does anybody have any questions on that? Any comments, concerns, ideas, anything? Straightforward. Additional topics that we covered in 2025. So our last roundtable was boat shrink wrap recycling. So I did a little bit of research before we brought this topic up, and I called marinas. Does anybody know how many marinas that we actively have in the Lakes region? The whole Lakes region, Ospey Lake, Lake Winnipesaukee, Squam, Newfound. Anybody have an idea?
More than 5.
More than 5 for sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a great guess. Anybody else?
150.
No less than that. 43. We've got 43 active marinas. So now, here's another thing too. The Laconia Daily Sun was actually at the same time of me researching this, also researching this, and we didn't even know we were both researching this at the same time. And they talked to a bunch of marina owners, and does anybody have an idea of how many tons of plastic one of our marinas might produce in one spring season when they unwrap boats? Four. About 3 to 5 months in average.
Yeah.
It's almost like I work for a solid waste.
Yeah, maybe I drove a truck.
So 3 to 5 tons per marina times 43 is what we're getting in one spring season, essentially. And that's from the month of April until the month of June. And we include the month of June because there's folks that come later in the season and then they unwrap their boats. So it's important to understand when these boats are being unwrapped. So at this training, we also invited a guest speaker. Her name was Carrie Parcell. She came from Barnstable County, Massachusetts, which is in Cape Cod. Mainly Chatham area is where she's focused out of. She works for the DPW there, and she's also a recycling coordinator and a program director. And they had an active boat shrink wrap recycling program where it's kind of like our HHW event where residents show up in a line. They have their boat wrapped up kind of like a burrito. And they take it and they collect it and then they bring it to a recycler that's actually gonna turn it back into maybe like a picnic table bench or picture frames or things like that. When we were at this meeting, here is our, and who was invited? I should probably say that, solid waste operators, municipal representatives, conservation groups, marina professionals. Everybody was invited to that. We did not invite residents because this was an informational session. So the way I looked at this was, this is our starting point to get everybody's perspective on this topic. Find out, is this actually an issue in our area? Do we find that to be true? Is there any obstacles or barriers that anybody knew about from the past or the present? All of these questions we wanted to find out, because I think that's very important before you start pursuing a solution. You need to find out all the questions and concerns first. And
4 minutes, man.
okay, 4 minutes, here we go. There was a program back 15 years ago, marinas were in charge of that, and one of the barriers was a waste hauler. Okay, so the discussion points. Everybody at the meeting found that it was an issue. Okay, marina operators, solid waste operators, municipals, everybody thought that this was an issue. The marinas were willing to actually wrap the recycling plastic, so they were willing to, if we find a solution, yes, we will take it off and we will take the care of actually wrapping it up so that a waste hauler will accept it. Because to have a resident do that, we found out from Carrie that a lot of times they don't come nice, neatly wrapped up like a present, like you're hoping. It came in a giant bundle. So the marinas are willing to do that in our area. They're willing to wrap it up. The thing is, it's the vendors, sometimes don't take all the different types of plastics. Some vendors only want white. Some vendors will take blue and white. And that has to do with anything with recycling plastic. There's different grades, there's different purposes. Some are worth more money than others. The other part to this too is the cleanliness of the plastic. They didn't want anything covered in water or muddy. They wanted it nice and clean, which is almost virtually impossible with both, right? Okay. Recycling program should be focused on marinas because that's our point source. We didn't find that residents were the main source of this. We found that marinas were the main source. And then during the season, the wrap needs to be moved weekly. This is another issue that the marinas found when they were trying to recycle, is that they fill up a bin within a week and then a hauler wouldn't come and take it. And they're still filling up more and more and more and more and more because they're working, they're taking the wrap off, but the stuff's not moving. So the takeaways to this is absolutely identifying a vendor in our local area that might be able to make a route up here to collect, or at least go to one centralized location. And they need to be able to do it more than one time. They need to be able to, I wouldn't know about weekly, but at least maybe monthly, they need to be able to do a pickup. We wanted to find out, this is a question that was posed, if we can actually bale this plastic with standard vertical balers that we have at the transfer station. Some people at the meeting thought that was not gonna happen. Some solid waste operators are there saying, I don't see why we couldn't. We could probably bail it up, because that makes it more desirable to bring it to market. Regional pickup and dumpster removal, I just covered that, but that's definitely a key concept for it. Other materials are potentially being made that are biodegradable. We had a marina rep that came and actually brought us a sheet of plastic that's supposedly new on the market right now, biodegradable in 3 months, and can go in the landfill. My big question though is, if it goes in the landfill, it's still in the landfill, even though it's biodegradable. So is that truly a solution, right? And I just want to point out that in our next solid waste management grant, part of this is, one of our scopes is to find a boat shrink wrap plastic solution of some sort. So next year, in the fall, this will be one of my grant scopes, is to work on potentially finding out, could we start a regional collection of some sort? Can we figure out a way to get a hauler to come up and collect shrink wrap plastic during that season? Okay. That's it on that topic. Is there any questions on it? I went through it as fast as I could, so. Any questions on boat shrink wrap plastic? This is my last thing, is that Make sure that you signed in if you want to get credit for the training. We got a quick exit survey. It takes, 2 seconds. It's circle the best answers, all it is. Please grab a training certificate from me. So once you complete the survey, I will give you a certificate. And hold on to that certificate because we're gonna ask you for it. Okay? Thank you for coming.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Said, Nick, you
Forgot about it. What are we, oh, we're taking a photo. Oh.
Too bad we got math and Bill.
Yeah, right? Oh, I'm standing.
Because we don't like any money. We like shutting down.
Thank you.
Oh, that worked. Yeah.
I use that. Good.
So now we just go for their.
Seriously though, if you want to.
I don't know, I didn't even look at it, my hair was on fire. That was my first fire. Oh, it took me out. Oh, my face is on.
What, like?
Yeah, the light.
Where you are?
Yeah, I saw one in your hand, thanks.
I'll tell her we did our batteries separate.
Going back? Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, you had another bag, right?
Yes, over there.
I hear one. You know.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. I put the link about it.
I was.
I got the last of the sign sheets.
Yeah.
So some of those ones.
Thank you, Madison. Bye, everybody. Hey, Trevor, you do the maps, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
This, yeah. Probably like the smaller stuff. This one.
Give it the mic. Oh, thank you. Yeah. You know how things is watching in there. Thank you.
Sign in.
Right.
Sorry, you signed.
I signed in, yeah, because I put it on the list.
Yeah, I know.
Email.
For keys are down there.
As long as you're on there, that's all that matters.
You're gonna need it to be correct, so you have to get the ones where we can leave that. Yeah.
I can help you guys set up too.
So you get snacking up there.
Yes, I don't have it on me, but
Central. You will roll on that side.
email or. Or I can also give you my card.
Okay, and then I can. Charlie, yes.
Where are you from?
Freedom.
Oh, okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry.
You're gonna wait for Dave.
All right, I know, I'm not gonna.
Fine.
I can.
What can I do to
I
help?
just,
Was it And then, the regular chair setup. Yeah. Okay, that would be lovely. Okay.
Was this?
We're gonna
was this
leave that
something
too.
for here? Okay, or maybe it's for his son. Maybe it's for his. Oh,
Hold back.
I think that's our bag.
Or whatever.
Is it okay if I unplug your computer?
Yes.
The Harris Center.
Oh, yeah, I should probably turn the.
Yeah, I guess in months we don't really spend it that way, but.